Hi there, my name's Amo, and in this video I'm going to teach you how to create a sound button. And that's just going to be a button that we press on our keyboard to play a sound in our scene. So the first thing we want to do is import our sound into our source library. So I'm going to, on the left hand side, I'm going to hit the plus button, and I'm going to select audio clip, and then I'm going to choose my sound to import. And so now that we've imported it, it lives inside our source library. So that means we can kind of use it throughout our various scenes. So to be able to add it, to be able to use it in this particular scene, we're going to want to drag and drop it into this scene. And when we do that, we'll see that the scene now has a layer. It's an invisible layer, but it represents our sound that we can now access its properties to be able to play and control the sound. Now, before we proceed and actually start to hear it, we're going to want to turn on this button down here in the output mix. This is the audio monitor button, and it allows us to actually hear the sound being played through our speakers or our headphones. And this is useful when we're setting things up and we want to make sure it's playing the sound correctly and everything's kind of correctly synchronized and whatnot. You can turn that off when you're actually broadcasting, which is usually what you want. You don't want to actually hear your own sounds being played. But it will broadcast out. It just means we won't be able to hear it. So for the purposes of experimentation and setting things up, we'll want to turn this on. So now, if we look under the properties of the sound that we added to our scene, we should be able to see these two actions here. Let's hit play and actually hear it. So there you go. We know it works and it's been added to the scene and everything is working as it should. So if we look at the properties here, you'll see that there's this transposed pitch property. That allows us to kind of increase or decrease the pitch of the sound. So if we increase it, it'll play a higher pitch version of it. And if we decrease it, it'll play a lower pitch. But for the purposes of this, we're going to leave it at 0, which is just the default, like, original pitch of the sound. The other thing to look at is this Sync to dropdown. That gives us the ability to kind of control when the sound plays. Now for this example, we're going to want to leave it at manual because we're going to be manually basically playing it. Manual basically just means that it can only be played with these actions here, either manually by us clicking it or through a hotkey that will connect to this action here. There's another version of manual here called manual polyphonic, and that just basically allows the sound to be played repeatedly on top of itself. So if I hit play multiple times, each time the sound is actually overlapping itself. If you leave it on normal manual, the sound actually cuts itself off. It doesn't allow itself to be played more than once at a time. That's generally what we want, because if you allow the sound to kind of overlap itself and you play it a bunch of times, you get this effect, this issue here where the sound is actually clipping, because all those sounds are being added up, all their volumes are being added up, and the total volume is actually going beyond the capabilities of the device, and so it introduces clipping. So we generally don't want that, so we'll leave it on manual for this example. But the other two other two options here for Sync 2 is scene activation. If we set scene activation, the sound will play whenever the scene activates, which we don't care about. And then global clock will synchronize the sound to a global clock. That's particularly useful if we have background music and we want that background music to be consistent throughout all of our scenes. If we add the same background music to all the different scenes and synchronize them to the global clock, it'll be seamless as we go across the scenes. But in this case, we just want to leave it on manual since we're going to be manually activating the sound ourselves when we press our button. So the next thing we need to do is add the hotkey to our source library. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to hit the plus button, and I'm going to add hotkey. And I'm going to assign the spacebar to this hotkey. So I'm going to click on assign, and I'm going to press spacebar on my keyboard. So now whenever we hit spacebar, it will trigger this alert here, this on-press alert. So all that's left to do is just to pull a wire out of on-press and connect it to this play action of our sound. So now when we hit spacebar, it plays our sound. The last thing we might want to do is create a visual representation of our sound being played. So a quick way to do this is to add a particle effect. So every single time it plays a sound, it also shows a bunch of particles. So I'm going to press the plus button here on the right-hand side, and I'm going to add the 3D particles to my scene. And if we just click on if we look through its properties here, and we click on emit burst here, it kind of, by default, it emits this kind of purpley burst of particles. For now, that's good. Let's connect our sound, our hotkey to this emit burst action so that it'll both play the sound and emit this particle effect. So I'm going to hover over the on-press wire hole here, and I'm going to pull another wire out of it. So you can see you can actually pull out multiple wires, and I'm going to connect it to the emit burst of our particle effect. So now it's going to both play the sound and emit these particles when we press space. So the last thing I might do here is just tweak the look of this particle effect to better match the color space of this environment. So I'm just going to darken the particles and make them alpha blended. That looks a little bit better. So there you go. That's kind of how you can set up a sound button. I hope this was interesting, and I will see you next time.